You know, I'll never understand the massive difficulty spike in this game. Like, you go from 40 floors at Stormy Sea to 99 floors at Buried Relic. Like, you know, 60, 70? Oh, hello, I'm sorry. I didn't see you there. That camera that I placed right in front of me, I didn't see it there. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to
Miss Migwava.
And today we're going to be talking about Dragon Ball. What I think is the most interesting aspect of Dragon Ball is just the way that, like, so many different people can watch this show, but, like, watch a different version of the show. Like, I know Explanation Point has talked about in his, like, his sub versus dub videos, or just in general, how, like, someone who watches the dub of a show can get a different experience. It's like almost watching a different show than the sub version. But like with Dragon Ball, there's so many different iterations of that just because of like the way it was licensed back in the day and like the way everything came out. Because like even with the original Dragon Ball, you have like Blue Water, Harmony Gold. Maybe you found the big green dub, who knows? But even just like on the American side of things, like there are people who got into Dragon Ball, like who very first got into Dragon Ball way back in the early days of the internet, where they were getting like you know, having to find whatever they could online and just getting like the original Japanese version of it. Then you have the Tsunami kids who were first introduced to it through the original Ocean dub, which is it's completely different to the later Funimation dub, when they then went back and remastered the dub with their in-house cast. Then you could be someone like me, where you got into Dragon Ball through Dragon Ball, they call it Dragon Ball Z Kai. That's what I'm calling it, because like I know in like the Japanese version it's called Dragon Ball Kai, but they don't actually cover the Dragon Ball anime, and the anime was split into two in the anime, so I call it Dragon Ball Z Kai because like they only covered the Dragon Ball Z portion of the anime. It's not Dragon Ball. Like, if you want to say, oh well, the original manga was just Dragon Ball. Okay, that's fine. This is the anime. You're doing the anime. Therefore, you're only doing the Dragon Ball Z anime. It's Dragon Ball Z Kai. That's my distinction. So even just on like a basic character level, you can look at someone like Vegeta and like, who's the real voice of Vegeta? Is it the original voice actor? Is it Brian Drummond? Is it Chris Sabat? And you're gonna get different answers from different people depending on when they got into the series. And then that goes even further when you look at stuff like, you know, soundtrack, the original score. You have the original Ocean dub score from the composer whose name is leaving me at the moment, but then you've got the Bruce Faulconer dub score. You have Faulconer Productions score. Then you have the original Shunsuke Kikuchi score for the original Japanese Dragon Ball. Then you go into like Dragon Ball Z Kai, and you have the Kenji Yamamoto score.
Oh my god, past Mathwiz, you're letting me down here. Basically what I'm trying to get at here is that different voice actors, different soundtracks will together create a completely different environment throughout each iteration of Dragon Ball. Watching Gohan attack Frieza on Namek can be a completely different experience depending on which show you're watching. You can feel completely different emotions based on what the music is trying to bring out, the emotions the actor is trying to bring out of that character, so on and so forth. Now take it away, past Mathwiz. Don't let me down again.
And then there are changes in the script as well that make the characters different. So you have like Superman Goku when he becomes a Super Saiyan, or you have, you know, the original Japanese Goku, the version of that speech, where he's just more like, he's less of a good person. He's just out for a battle, out for like self-satisfaction through fighting. And so like it's like you could say, oh, I've watched Dragon Ball. I've watched, you know, yeah, like I've seen Dragon Ball. I'm familiar with the story of Dragon Ball. But at the same time, different people can have different ideas of what Dragon Ball is. So like if you're someone like me, who really only like first experienced the series in its entirety through Dragon Ball Z Kai, then watching like the original series or like watching the dub of the original series or whatever, it's just different. I kind of tried to capture this in my like soundtrack video about Dragon Ball, but I didn't do that very well. It wasn't a very good video. Don't watch it.
Though that could be because I'm just dumb.
For example, one thing that I noticed when I was making my soundtrack video about Dragon Ball was just that original scene where Gohan fights Frieza on Namek. And it's just interesting to see, like, the way when he powers up, like, he does his big, like, ball attack and holds it over his head. And just the way, like, the lights flash, like, in the original series, it's a lot more, like blinking lights. So it's kind of, like, a little rough on the eyes. But then, of course, in the redone version for Dragon Ball Z Kai, there's like it's not like as flashy, like it's more standard. And then like when, you know, just certain things, like when he lunges at him, like his face like pops out a bunch of times in the original, but in Kai it doesn't do that. It's just one solid like motion. One of the problems with this, however, is that because there's so many different iterations of Dragon Ball, there tends to be a bit of elitism between which is the true Dragon Ball. Because, I mean, obviously the original Dragon Ball would be the manga. And then after that, I guess if you want to say, like, what's the original anime? Well, then it'd be the Japanese, like the original one that came out in the 80s and 90s. Well, original Dragon Ball was 985. Blah. What's the real Dragon Ball? What's the best Dragon Ball? I'm not so much a fan of, like, that part of the community. And to be fair, my soundtrack video about Dragon Ball didn't really, like, I'm being kind of hypocritical in that video, because, like, I was, like, more so just talking about my musical preference, and I felt like the video just I could have done so much more to make it better. So, like, I watched Dragon Ball Kai with the Yamamoto score, so, like, that's just the sound of Dragon Ball to me. I like the music, but it's also, like, not his music, so that sucks. But it's interesting then, because, like, when I watched Dragon Ball Kai, it was just weird, because, like, halfway through, like, it airing, when the dub was airing on Nicktoons, it switched over to the Kikuchi score, so I'm in, like, a weird limbo state, like, in a weird middle ground, where part of the sound of Dragon Ball for me is the Yamamoto score, but part of it is the Kikuchi score. Like, when I think of the Cell Saga, I'm gonna think of Kikuchi scores, because that's the music that Dragon Ball Z Kai used. That's what the dub used. And it's different, like, the original series airing in Japan switched over the Yamamoto score much later, but because, like, it took time to get overseas, they had to, they had more time to fix it before the end of the series. So it's just interesting that, like, even because that aired in 2009 onwards, so, like, if people were watching the Japanese version of it back then, and, like, that was their first exposure to Dragon Ball, then they would be more familiar with the Yamamoto score than I am. Although there are some people who think that Dragon Ball Z Kai is trash and you shouldn't watch it. Which, you know, is fair, because then also you have to consider filler. The Dragon Ball Z anime has filler, has lots of filler. The Dragon Ball anime has filler as well. But, like, some of that filler people see as, like, it's good filler, because, like, it's character building stuff. Because you have, like, with Gohan in the manga, in, like, the Saiyan Saga, there's, like, that training period, which just kind of happens off screen. He just becomes a different character off screen, and we don't get to see that development. Whereas in the anime, they add in filler to strengthen that, to make it better. So it's like, yeah, I could see cutting that filler to, like, to have a more faithful interpretation of the manga's vision, but at the same time, like, if I want to see the flaws of the original manga, I can just go read the manga. So it's just, I don't know. Dragon Ball is a weird beast, because, like, a bunch of people have seen it, like, a lot of people have seen it, and there aren't many other shows, I think, like this, that have so many different versions that people can get into. I'd imagine Sailor Moon would have something similar, because, like, obviously that being licensed differently, and you have, like, Sailor Moon Crystal coming back, but, like, Dragon Ball, it's, I think, one of the most prevalent, if not the most prevalent, among anime, because it's still super popular. So, like, nowadays, you have people who can get into it through the Team 4 Star abridged parody, or maybe they got into Dragon Ball through the video games. And then, like, you've got Dragon Ball Super coming out now, so new fans are getting into Dragon Ball because of Dragon Ball Super. And so, Dragon Ball is still relevant. There are still new people finding Dragon Ball, and that's only going to perpetuate this weird, what does Dragon Ball mean to different people? The more people get into it, the more people will get into it through different ways. It's crazy. It's crazy. Dragon Ball is a weird beast, And so, like, the narrative's been gone over. I love my Dragon Ball dissection, really digging deep into what makes the narrative good and not so good. But beyond that, I think it's just more interesting to look at these different interpretations of Dragon Ball and just seeing what it means to different people. Because even at that point, like, for some people, Dragon Ball is a huge inspiration, and so, like, Superman Goku is important to them because, like, that's, like, I've seen stories of people who, like, got big into working out and, like, making themselves a better person because of, you know, the original dub's interpretation of Son Goku. So it's just really interesting to think about. It's way more interesting than the series itself, like the original story, because yeah, it's like it's a big foundation for like Shonen Jump and other stories, other action adventure stuff like it. It's just crazy. It's a crazy world we live in. Dragon Ball is crazy, and yeah, you can tell why this didn't make for a full scripted video, because I don't know how to end it. And there's gonna be other videos like this. That's what this challenge is all about. I have a bunch of scripts I never finished, or I didn't think I was ever gonna like get to for a fully edited scripted video. So you're getting this. We'll see how it goes for the rest of the month. Thank you for watching me for another edition of this. And play Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. It's great.